Hello.
There you are.
There
Hello?
you are. Can you hear me okay?
Hi.
I hear you typing.
I think you hear me now.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I'm good.
How are
I'm
you
good. I'm
today,
good.
Ali? How has
I'm
your
I'm
Monday
I'm
been?
good. It's Monday, so that's good. What's going on out there?
um, yeah, it's one of those things where it's just another day. And,
No.
part of me is like this whole thing, obviously was jarring in the beginning. But then I
Mm,
started wondering, I'm like, I'm actually liking this a little bit. What does that say about me? The
mm.
fact that I don't have to go outside and meet people if I don't want to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. My wife is very similar. This is an introvert's dream right now. So she's I mean, she's enjoying the staying in part, but not the rest. The rest is all crappy. So
Yeah, that part. And I guess it's because like, with work, thankfully still have a job. So every day it's a slew of meetings, talk to different people, and I have my daughter here, so I have that physical human connection.
you
But
do.
if I didn't have that, I am certain I would go batty. So
Yeah. Yeah. How's the family doing?
I mean, thankfully everyone is well,
Yeah.
everyone is healthy, and we started Ramadan started, so now
Yeah.
it's just like, because even then I was thinking like, how different is it really? Like every year I've been doing this by myself. It's going to be strange during Eid because that's when I
Mm,
would go back, go to mom's house, and we would all
right.
fly in and do Eid. And
Yeah.
now we're going to have to do it solo in the house. So it's going to be interesting.
That's gonna be weird. I know my mom was telling me the same thing, because it's gonna be hard. I am not fasting, as you can tell, so you know. But yeah, I think it's been such a crazy adjustment for everyone. I'm still trying to figure this out. Honestly, it's so funny. I'm an ambivert, so I like my extroversion. So I want
Yeah.
to go out. I want to go to a Starbucks, and I want to just talk to random strangers on the plane. Um, but on the other hand, I'm just in. So it's I think we're all discovering a lot about ourselves right now, which is good, in a weird fashion.
I agree. And it's so interesting that I am now starting my podcast where, you know, I could have done it before, but now I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, let me reach out to people. Like you are literally of the panel of people that I've spoken to, you're the only one that I know that I
Yeah.
have any connection with. The other
Yeah.
people is just like people that I like their work and I think it's going to be meaningful to have a conversation with them.
Yeah. Good for you.
And
Yeah, I think it's great. You got to start somewhere, right? Every
yeah,
I'm so happy. So when I got your email, um, I'm like, first of all, I can help. I'm no expert, when it comes to life. We're all trying to figure this out. But I'm glad you're trying something new. This is the time to create. We're always consuming stuff, right? We're
right.
always like, I'm personally tired of that. I want to do something different. Want to really kind of put yourself out there. So let's do this. Tell me what's on your mind.
Yeah. And so, why I wanted to reach out to you first, let me give you the premise of what the podcast is. So,
Yeah.
it's a story and a chat, and it's basically a meeting place for my perspectives being shared with other people, right?
Hmm.
Because I truly believe that it is through conversation that we evolve, that we build communities,
Yeah.
and we make connection. And so, it all starts with a conversation. And so, every conversation that I have, there's a topic, but it starts with one question. And I will
Hmm.
ask you that question, and there is where we will launch the conversation. Now, for this specific conversation, I wanted to talk about leadership, especially how it pertains to women
Yeah.
leaders. And why I wanted to speak to you is because you have a very approachable manner to leadership and how you're developing leadership. It's very much talk to your people, listen to your people,
Right.
open up to your people, share with them.
Yeah.
right? It's very, it's not the traditional sense of leaders that we have grown up with, right? That
Mm,
this bombastic figure, he will tell us what to do,
sure.
and when we are right, when we are wrong. You are
Yeah.
here saying, you come and you be vulnerable to your
Mm,
team, and
mm,
then you ask them to be vulnerable right back to you, right? So
right.
it's that style of leadership development that truly speaks to me, because in my perspective, it's a very human approach, and it's not very godlike, where the leader is the god, so you do
Sure.
whatever the leader says. So that's why I thought your perspective would be very important to this specific conversation that I want to have. So I would like to start it off with you, in your own words, introducing yourself, telling us who you are and what you are known for.
Sure. Well, do you want me to just do the whole formal name thing as
Yes,
well? Okay.
please.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited. I think this is a great venture, especially for you. Um, we've known each other for, I want to say, a couple of years now, I think at this point. I know we used to work together a while back in California. For your audience, my name is Ali Merchant. I have been in leadership development for, wow, I'm gonna date myself now. This is not good. It's been more than a decade at this point, and I kind of stumbled upon this area because, just like most of us, we've all had really horrible bosses. I've had my fair share of them, and I'm sure you have as well. And I used to have one. This is in California. We're not going to name names here, obviously, but this individual had a very interesting style of managing. It was all about telling, and it was all about commanding. It was never about listening to his team. So now we know he's a guy. And I was just starting out, and I quickly realized that there's got to be a better way. Because I would go home and I would be so upset because of all the small things this person would tell me. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way in life. You're not bringing the best out of me. And I just figured no one was giving this person their best. Everyone was just phoning it in. And that's what led me to believe that uh, there's this massive opportunity. And you might laugh, Aisha, but I think leadership development is just like uh, creating happiness, because people are so stressed out at work. And in my experience, what I've seen after talking to hundreds of managers is when we are stressed out at work, we take it out at home. We take it out on our spouses. We take it out on our dogs. We just start to have really bad relationships. So I'm not trying to make this overly dramatic. What I'm trying to say is poor leadership carries in your personal life, and someone's got to do something about it. So a couple of years back, I said, I'm going to start my own business, and just try and play a little part in just a very tiny part in helping one person. And even if I can help one person, I think I've done my job. So here we are.
And I have to say, being the recipient of your knowledge on the other side, even though I'm not a people manager right now, I still read and find a lot of relevance in your material, because it's making human connections. And like you said, everything we do at work, everything that we experience from our teams, or maybe even our bosses, we bring it back home. It's all connected. It's all connected. I know we strive for that work-life balance, but it's really a lot more fluid than that. And it's always been that way. So Ali, thank you for that. I want to start off the conversation now with the question: do women suck as leaders?
That is an unequivocally no right there. And I'll tell you why, because um, I think I'm a mama's boy. So my mother is a leader, number one. So let's start there. My wife happens to be an incredible leader. And I think the way we define the word leadership tends to cause a lot of issues. right? So for the scope of this conversation, let's start to talk about women leaders at work, because I think that's what we're most interested in. I think what we have to understand first and foremost is the fact that women are dealing with different types of challenges that men are at work. And I think the problem is a lot of male leaders like myself fail to understand the types of challenges that women are going through. And we tend to put them in a box, and we tend to, to your question, say, bad leader, good leader. You don't have that. You have different grades when it comes to leadership. So I'm going to say the same thing. Can women be average leaders? Sure, just like men. But there's no bias out there that says all women are bad leaders. In fact, one of my strongest leaders are women. So it kind of, changes the landscape. But I think when it comes to training opportunities, we need to be providing different types of training to women at times. But I've heard that some women can have different types of issues, but I think women can be really strong leaders as well.
So let's take it back, right, to the beginning, as I will say. And I will ask you to define what a leader is. Not a good or bad, but just what is a leader?
Yeah, it's if we knew the answer to that, that would have been really simple, but it really depends on who you ask. I'll give you my definition, right? A leader, in my opinion, is someone who has the ability to connect. And the word connect can be really nebulous. I'm going to double click on that a little bit. A leader is someone who can be strategically vulnerable. Okay, and we can talk a little bit about that. A leader can be someone who has the ability to do specific things really well. I'm getting tactical, but this is important. Someone who can listen, and someone who has the ability to stay curious a little bit longer.
Okay.
If you think about it, if I were to ask you about your favorite leaders, and I do this in all my workshops, we ask this question, think about a good leader. Aisha, 9 out of 10 times people will say, you know what, this person, he would listen to me, or she would really listen to me. She would not be providing me with answers all the time. If I needed advice, if I needed counsel, I would go to this person. Now, why is that? Why do we trust people? Why do we trust some people a little bit more and a little bit less? Because they have the ability to connect with you on a very different level. When you are talking to them, they give you the respect of listening to you. That's one. Now, let's kind of think about why a good leader listens. A good leader listens not because he or she wants to just listen all the time, but a good leader listens because they're trying to understand you. That's where leadership starts. Now, the problem that we see across the board is managers or newer managers are told that you need to have answers to all the questions. Or if you say, I don't know, people will think that you are weak. That's the opposite. In fact, if a leader has the courage to raise her hand and say, you know what, guys, I don't know the answer to this. What do you think? That leader will immediately gain the trust of her team. So you want to take a step back and really understand the big picture. Are you able to listen? And are you able to ask the right questions so that you can stay curious just a little bit longer so that the other person starts to open up? That's true leadership, right? We all know you need the right mission. You need the right vision. You need to inspire. You need to motivate. You need to give feedback. Those are all tactics. You can't do any of this until and unless you have those two muscles of listening and asking the right types of questions.
I'm going to go back because this is the second time you've said understanding. The first time
Right.
it was when asked if women suck as leaders, you were just like, I think it's a challenge in understanding the challenges that they have. And then the second time, a good leader is one who takes time to understand their people. It sounds easy enough. Let's spend some time to understand.
Sure.
But, and this could be a whole separate conversation in itself, right? Like, what are the components of understanding? How do you develop understanding? How do you strive for understanding? So let me go back to your first statement of, we just don't fully understand the challenges that women leaders face. Let's start there. What are some challenges that you have seen that women leaders face that people don't necessarily understand?
I'll give you a really good example and a timely example. So just today, coincidentally, there's a manager that I work with who has a team, and they're right now everyone's remote. And she was asking me, she's like, hey, listen, I need to align with my team right now. We're all over, we used to be an in-person office. This is the first time we're remote. So we spoke about expectations and figuring out, okay, who's working at what time, who's not working at what time, etc., which was simple enough. But then she came back to me and she's like, Ali, actually, there's something more that I'm struggling with. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. And she's like, I have a newborn 9-month-old baby, and my entire team, they're young. Most of them are male. They don't have kids. I'm their manager. How can I explain to them that I am not going to be as attentive to them as much as I used to be before I had a kid? Now, I've been doing this for a decade, like I said, and I've heard all sorts of challenges, but this blew my mind because it's been 10 years of me doing this, and I never, ever even thought to understand, oh, that could be a challenge. Right now, it's a simple one that a woman is going to have. Now, here's the beauty of this challenge, and that's why I was saying unequivocally women don't suck as leaders, because the self-awareness that I see in women is incredibly high than the self-awareness I see in men. And I'm going to put myself in this example. If I have a problem with my team, I can simply say, hey guys, this is not going to happen. This is non-negotiable. I'm the boss, blah, do it like this or do it like that. But this woman actually emailed me saying, I feel guilty. I don't know how to tell my team that I have a kid. They know I have a kid, but I'm going to need more time. And that's just crazy to me to think about the fact that a mother in 2020 has to actually walk on eggshells, and she's an incredibly great manager, thinking that I need to make this, I need to explain to my team that I need more time to spend with my kids, especially during these days. That's just one example, right? But let me kind of talk to you about one more thing when it comes to understanding, right? Here's the challenge, and I'm going to assume here, so please correct me if I'm wrong, right? I hear this question, do women leaders suck because they don't seem to be getting promoted? There's this 5-year landmark study that's done, which talks about the fact that, when it comes to the glass ceiling right now, we have a couple of cracks. But when it comes to climbing the glass ceiling, the highest rung is the bottom rung. Women are not getting promoted as first-time managers. That's the biggest problem. And I'll tell you why. Because right now, if you look at the latest data, 1 out of 4 women in a boardroom is a woman right now, 25%, right? Which is BS. We need more representation here. But men and women think that, oh, the representation is good enough right now and it's getting better. So that's why everyone's getting promoted and everything is great, but it's not. 1 out of 4 is actually abysmal. And the way we increase that ratio is we give more opportunity to women at the bottom rung. And here's the biggest problem with opportunity. We have an abundance of mentors right now. Everyone's willing to mentor women and men, but here's the bigger problem. we don't have a lot of sponsors when it comes to women. Right? Now, for your audience, would you like me to explain the
I
difference
was
between
just
mentors and
going to ask
sponsors?
you to do that. Yes.
Right? Let's take the same example of this woman who said, "Hey, I have a kid, and I need, I need to kind of figure this out." I can be a mentor to her, and I can give her some ideas, or I can connect her to a woman who's had a kid, and we can mentor her. But I don't work with her, so I can't sponsor her for a promotion. So sponsors are internal. Sponsors are people who can go to bat for you at your job, who are at the same level to your boss, or they're your boss's peers, right? So women might have an incredible amount of mentors to them, but a lot of women are saying, "Hey, listen, great, but I need you to sponsor me. I need you to be the one that goes to bat for me. I need you to be the one that understands when I negotiate for you or negotiate on my behalf." That's a problem. Until such time that we don't have enough sponsors, we're going to have a challenge.
The example that you used about the new mother, not only have I just recently been there, I have a 3-year-old daughter, but surprisingly, I was one of those people that she would have likely had to speak to. And I say this because many years ago, I used to work with women. They were my peers, but they were mothers at that time, new mothers. And for some reason, I used to hold it against them that they're leaving work early. And I used to count it as a badge of honor. Well, I'm still at work. I'm still here working, and they're off, running off to home. So this is me as a woman thinking this about another woman. So, I mean, there's different things there. It was my own imposter syndrome, my own kind of, thinking from a place of scarcity that, there's only room for one woman at the top, and that needs to be me, right? I didn't see this as kind of a team effort or a collaboration of sorts of peers. But you said that that's self-awareness that women have versus men. Is there something else at play there too? Like, can that level of self-awareness be debilitating? This woman, she is thinking about all these things like, oh, I feel guilty about this. I feel guilty. But it was that word when you said that she felt guilty, having a level of self-awareness. Yeah. But then what comes after that? The emotions that get tied to that guilt, that's debilitating.
Right. Yeah. I mean, from the women counterparts that I have, I've seen that side to it, which is the burnout side, which is I'm going to deliberately use the word care. I care for my team. I'm nurturing. I'm trying to care for someone. I can't even pretend to understand that. I care for my team, obviously, but I would not be able to comment on how a woman feels. But I'm certain that could feel debilitating because we're putting women are putting themselves out to make sure everyone is happy. The system is working. It's not take it or leave it. I'm sure it's really hard to find the balance. Again, I wouldn't know. I can't even comment on it, how someone would figure that part out. But you see that. And, again, going back to data, this might be interesting for your audience. Another reason, going back to the burnout column, is women can have a harder time delegating tasks than men do. Right. And again, that's really interesting.
We even see that at home, right? Like, I mean, I know we're talking about work, but we see this a lot in the home space where women feel like they run the household, they do it without a lot of help, right? So that could be said at home.
It's asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
It's asking for help. It's difficult. And there's this data point, which is really interesting when they ask for help because they don't want to do it. They rush through it. Because if you don't want to do something, you just kind of rush through it. So they appear to be curt. right? They're like, oh,
Right.
you're just being dismissive. You're not trying to
Mm-hmm.
explain to me. So there are these challenges, but again, the problem that my sex has right now is lack of training and an incredible amount of bias. Listen, that's not I hate using the word problem, but we all have so many different biases that we're born with, right?
Right.
We need someone to actually educate how this is going to work. I'll give you another example that I see all the time when it comes between men and women. I have done this personally, unintentionally, where I will interrupt someone.
Right.
And I'm sure if someone were recording me, I might have interrupted women more than I might have interrupted men. I don't have the data to prove that, but I'm sure I've done that. And you see that, in fact, just again, since this conversation is so timely, just yesterday, I think 2 days back on Twitter, the former CEO of Twitter was talking about the fact that how during performance reviews, women would be labeled as aggressive, but men would never be labeled as aggressive. And he's like, I know those guys, they're incredibly aggressive, right? But when a woman takes charge, she is sometimes put in this box that,
Right.
you're being aggressive, etc. Again, I can't speak to it. That's just I'm just rattling out data
Right.
points. But you see that in men, we need to be better educated. This is not about one's right, one's wrong here, right? This is not about a competition. This is about how do you coexist with each other? Because going back to leadership, Aisha, if you don't have diversity, not just diversity of color, but diversity of gender.
Right.
But if you don't have diversity of thought, then what's the point of diversity of gender and color? What's the point of us giving women a seat on the table when no one's listening to them?
Right.
And I'm not saying no one's listening to them, but I'm saying we have to do a better job of understanding that. So, these are challenges that we have to, and I think we're making progress, but we're far from figuring this out.
So 2 things. Going to go back to the point about the feeling of guilt, right? That comes with the self-awareness women feel. And then the second is what you said about men need to be trained. They need more education. So while you were speaking about that, it came to mind how much of this is environment related, like the feeling of guilt. Would she feel guilty if she felt that she worked in an environment that was accepting of her motherhood, that it was okay for her to not be around as much because she was a mother? And then if that were the case, then she would feel more confident in coming to a conversation and be able to confidently say, I can't attend this meeting because I have to attend to my child, and not feel any emotion about it, but very matter of fact that this is the way I work, right? And it brings to mind something that I had to practice when I became a new mother. I remember my first job after becoming a new mother, and I had to start a new job, a brand new role, brand new company, which was scary as hell. But sure. I remember my first meeting, because thankfully that role did give me a seat at the table. And so when I came to that table for the first time, surrounded by senior leaders and executive leadership, what I said to them was that what I'm doing here from 9 to 5 with you guys is just for fun. My real job starts when I get back home, because my real boss is waiting for me there. Now, I was scared shitless when I said that, because I said it as a joke, because it was me testing, number one, my confidence in myself. Do I have the courage to set this limit for myself? Because you understand, because I went back to agency life, and agency life, 60 hours, average a week, right? And I couldn't do that as a mother.
Sure.
And I just wouldn't. Even if I could, I just didn't want to. And so I was testing my own bravery, my own courage. Like, do I have what it takes to set that limit for myself and for others? And then number two, it was also testing how it was going to be received by the
Yeah.
people that were going to be my leaders, the leaders of this company. What will it say about the culture of that company? And I was so scared to do that. But I'm glad I did, because
Yeah.
then the job after that I had, again, elevated role, new company. When I said that again, I was a different person when I said it.
Mm.
I said it with a whole lot more courage. I said
Yeah.
it with actual conviction that,
Yeah.
yeah, I am here for my fun. This is adult fun.
Right.
But it
Right.
didn't take away from the quality of work that I was bringing to the
Right.
company, right?
Yeah.
But again, it was, and then the environment in those two companies were different. The company that I'm at now, where I said it again, it feels more accepting of
Mm.
me, who I am when I come to work, which is a mother, which is a worker, which is all of my identities, right? But
Sure.
mother being the pivotal part of that.
Right.
And
Right.
so I feel much more open
Yeah.
to, even before like coronavirus, like, whenever I would be on late night calls or early morning calls, if Aliza, my daughter, was sitting on my lap, I would not care. It would not be, I need to kick her out of the room. I
Sure.
was comfortable with bringing my motherhood into my work
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But that hasn't always been the case. It took practice. I had to practice to get there. I had to practice
Right.
courage, but I also had to be in the right environment to do that. So when you say training for men, it also made me think about the confidence that women can bring to the environment, to challenge the environment, to change the environment.
Oh, I love what you said about practicing courage, right? I just made a note of that. I think that that's incredible. And I'm happy you had the confidence to to do that. A lot of people, some people don't have it. It's difficult, right? Some of us, and again, confidence is like that magic elixir, right? You have it, you don't, you can work on it. We can talk about growth mindset, fixed mindset, whatever. But I'm happy to hear that you had the ability and the confidence and the conviction to speak your truth, right? But what I also want to add is, and I think you made that point earlier, is your leadership was receptive.
That's right.
The company, the word that I was looking for is, you had psychological safety,
That's right.
right? And when you have psychological safety, when you feel safe psychologically at work, guess what happens? You produce better work.
That is
Your
absolutely right.
productivity, your productivity goes up, right? It's amazing research that specifically talks about the fact that if we are unable to speak our truth because someone is going to reprimand us for it, either we're going to just shut ourselves down or we're going to just check the box. So there's so many elements of culture that are involved. But going back to training, and training is a big bad word here. When I talk about training, I'm talking about educating people that, we have people who have kids who have different types of commitments. And again, going to an agency role, everyone's young. People are drinking at 2:30 in the afternoon there. It's like, oh, if you don't come to a happy hour, you're just, you don't belong here. So it's a clique. But you have to, explain that, hey, I'm still part of the clique, but now I have different responsibilities. I think it's a rite of passage for people to understand. But here's another point, right? We didn't talk about this. I'm bringing this up shamelessly, about this idea of being strategically vulnerable. That's what you did. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you took a calculated risk. You said, hey, I'm going to try something. And I see you nodding your head furiously, right? That's what you did. And you took a risk. You kind of figured out, hey, this place might be my type of environment. And even now in 2020, a lot of places will show you the door for that. So it's challenging. Again, as a dude, it's hard for me to speak to, obviously, some of these areas. But I love the fact, about practicing courage. You have to try it, but it's risky. It's risky for a lot. for a lot of elements here. So, and a lot of times people withhold that. They're like, oh, I'll just absorb it. I'll figure it out. I'll change my calendar so that my team doesn't find out, right? But then we don't, we don't move forward in life.
Right. But I mean, men feel fear as well, right? You guys get scared too, right?
Sure.
How does that, I don't know if it's a why question or a how question. Maybe let's start with a how. How does that manifest at work?
Tell me more. What do you mean by that?
When I'm scared at work
right.
about making a mistake, that can translate into a few things.
Sure.
Like if I'm scared about a meeting that I'm going into, it could translate into me working long hours to prepare for that meeting, to make sure I've checked off every box, crossed all T's, dotted all I's. And something that I hear a lot of women say is, the way I rose to the top is because I was always the smartest person in the room, or I was the hardest working person there. No one could ever beat me on that.
Right.
When I hear that, I don't celebrate it. Now I don't celebrate it. I don't buy into it. What I hear is that were those things that you were doing to make up for your lack of self-confidence. You didn't feel confident enough. That's why you had to be the hardest working, or you had to work the long hours that you did. So I know that's some ways for myself, like fear has translated into the work. That it's fear because I feel like I don't know enough. So I will work harder to prepare for whatever may come from that meeting. How does something similar like that work for men?
So I'll give you a personal example, but I'll add a curveball to it. As a man and a person of color, I still feel that I have to work harder to get some things done. And I'll give you an example. I've been fortunate with a great career, and I sit on the board of this organization, and they brought me in specifically because they're like, oh, we need to reach people of color. And I was like, are you bringing me in for that or for my skills, right? So it becomes difficult. But I have often found myself working harder to get the same. And I don't view that. You and I differ a little bit on that, and which is good. I don't view that as a self-confidence thing. I'm still discovering a lot of things in life. I feel some of it is cultural, where I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed the competition of it, but it could be disheartening where I feel, and again, that's my assumption, that someone else who is sitting right next to me might not have to work as hard to prove something that I might have to. I see that a lot. It's not right. It's not wrong. That's just the way of the world, where I might say something and someone might be like, sure. And then the guy on my right might say the exact same thing, but they might be like, oh, that's a great idea. So I think Aisha, I think we're all trying to figure our place in life. There is no freaking manual for this. None. It just doesn't exist. In my opinion, what I've tried to do is I've tried to make peace by saying you're not wrong, I'm not wrong. We're just both different, and we're trying to coexist. I see this movement where we're always saying they're wrong, or he's wrong, or she's wrong, or I'm right. That is counterproductive. And again, I'm going back to the same thing that we started this conversation, because we're not listening then. Remember, we spoke about the two fundamentals of leadership, which is listen and ask questions. We're not doing that because we're so fixated by saying, hey man, I'm the one that's right. And you're the one that's wrong. We're just different people trying to coexist. And we're trying to figure this out. Anyone who says they have the right answers, stop listening to them, because they don't. No one does at this point. These are just opinions. And that's what I would tell your audience to do as well, which is read up, look up some data, and the best thing you can do is ask someone, ask a woman, ask someone who you feel is marginalized, and ask them about their experience. That's the best way you learn, and just shut up and listen to them without judging, which is so, and again, that's another characteristic of a visionary leader who has the ability of just not judging. You don't have to judge people. You can judge someone's performance. You should as a manager, but you don't have to say you're wrong, you're right. Your performance might be lacking. That's something different at this point. Sorry for the tangent, but I think you know.
That was great. I that's why you're great for this, because I enjoy your rambles. They're always so informative. I want to.
I got a lot more questions.
We may need to do a follow-up call, but I did want to get a little bit deeper into the thinking around we're different and that's okay.
Yeah.
Versus right or wrong. Right or wrong can help simplify the
Sure.
path forward, right? Like, hey, we're trying to get something done. I want to find the best way to do it. Which the best can also mean the shortest time, the
Sure.
less amount of money that it takes, whatever,
Yeah.
right? However you want to quantify or define best. But right or wrong seems to get us there quickly, versus if we're just like, oh yeah, that's different. That's a different opinion. Yes,
Sure.
I agree. It almost, can we get to a solution that way? And what does that look like? And I know I'm putting a very business lens to this, but I think this is applicable in everyday life as well too. Like if we think of home life, whether, two partners or any relation that you have in the house, it's just like, you're wrong, I'm right, we're going to do it my way. This is applicable in all walks of life.
I love that question. It's a great question because it doesn't come with an easy answer. From a business lens, if there's an emergency, as a leader, you have to step up and be the one that takes command. You have to do that. But hopefully you don't get into a place where you have to start telling people, because if you've been a great leader, your people will step up, right? There are two schools of thought here. The first school of thought is the type of manager who is going to jump in and save their people. The second school of thought is, no, let my people fail just a little bit so that they understand failure and then they can improve better, right? So it really depends on the situation. I think for progress to be made, we will still need referees. We will still need, gatekeepers. The challenge is who referees the gatekeepers. That's the problem, right? I'll give you another example. And if my wife ever listens to me, this is going to be really bad. So when it comes to cooking, I love cooking. She loves cooking. But when it comes to the dishwasher, I will load the dishes. And my wife, who I love to death, is going to unload them and do it again. And I'm like, we're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing. And she's like, no, you're doing it wrong. Right? Who's to say who is right, who is wrong here? But I've resigned to the fact that she knows what she's doing a little bit better than I do. So I'm going to let it go. I'll still try, but I'll tell her, I love you. Hey, you knock yourself out because I don't want to fight because of a freaking dishwasher. Right? So there are times where we have to let go and say who's right, who's wrong. I think you have to be strategic about that. But if you feel that someone is completely dropping the ball and you don't help them correct it, right? If you don't tell them, hey, direct report, you have been amazing, but lately your performance has been just incredibly low and I care for you. And that's why I want you to hear this from me, that something needs to change. you're right. You have to call that out. If you don't, you're failing as a leader, right? So
Right.
it's that's why it's never black or white. You know, Aisha, when it comes to leadership, trauma, people, we're all incredibly messy. There just isn't an answer. And I hate saying this because I've spent the last decade in workshops where people say, oh, Ali, don't say it depends. And I'm like, but dude, it always does, because we're talking about two people. It, you know, you have, you know, that there's a term for it. It's called situational leadership,
Mhm.
right? The way I manage you is very different than the way I manage Elise or you know, whomever. It completely depends. So kind of, you know, winding this down a little bit, yes, we need rights and wrongs in certain cases. Yes, but in a lot of cases, we need to start to trust people and we need to trust principles. Because principles aren't going to change. Principles are here
Right.
for life,
Right. It's
right?
so fascinating. You brought up the laundry, the dishwasher example. My mother does the same thing. We will load the dishwasher, but she will take it out, rinse it again, and it's because it's the same thing. It's not done correctly. Whereas more correctly, it is not done according to her preference.
Agree. There you go.
She
Yes.
prefers it to be done another way. So I wonder how conversations would change with people if we were to start using that more, not right versus wrong, but I prefer this versus that.
I
And
yes. Go on, please.
because back to your two fundamentals about asking questions, that leads to more question asking. A yes or a no, a right versus wrong, you stop right there and all your defenses come. Like,
Right.
you're saying I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong, and this is why I don't think I'm wrong. You stop listening to the other person. You start
Yeah.
going into your internal defense mechanisms.
Right.
Whereas if you hear someone else saying, oh, this isn't how I prefer it, you're more likely to then follow that up with, oh, why not? You
Yeah.
know,
Right. Right.
what are your preferences, right? And so, but the workplace, right, again, where we need to make certain decisions based on certain frameworks, where we need to define what right and wrong is, what good or bad is. There's still some issues there, right? Because by whose preferences are we saying this
Sure.
is right or wrong, this is bad
Yeah.
or good? Like, we can say that, oh yeah, it's very quantitative, it's based on sales, it's based on revenues, based on this, we need to hire for this, we need to hire for that. But a lot of the biases that women face in the workplace isn't because there are certain things written in the company's bylaws, right? It's because of workplace norms,
Sure.
cultural norms at the workplace, which is not written down anywhere. It's just behaviors that have just stuck and become practices. And
Yeah.
they could be infused into the hiring practices, into the development, training practices. Um, how how do you how do we even approach changing workplace norms?
Yeah.
Again, back to the question of people being trained versus people being brave enough to show up
Sure.
to cause change.
Sure. So I'll give you an example, which might be a little relevant. So this is something that we've done with my team a couple of years back, where we would talk about making mistakes, right? And what we would say is, listen, why don't we come up with a situation where mistakes in this area are encouraged, meaning fail, take a risk, do whatever you want to, just go knock yourself out. No one's getting in trouble when it comes to these areas. But when it comes to this area, we got to get our act together, right? So the analogy is, you know, below the ship line. Below the ship line, if something happens, the ship is going to sink. So those are non-negotiables. So it's not about a question of preferences at that point.
Right.
Right? That's a hard opinion. But when it comes to above the ship line, you can mess around. If this is your preference, you do that. If that's your preference, you do that. That's completely fine, right? That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it recently, this is something that we're trying it, we're experimenting, and this is something your audience should try if they're leading people or can try is the concept of hard opinions versus soft opinions. As a manager, I can go to my team and say, listen, guys, I'd love for us to read this book, whatever this book is. And you can read it or you cannot read it. All good. Soft opinion. Knock yourself out. If you hate the book, let me know. Soft opinion, right? And you should have most of your opinions soft if you have a good team. But there are going to be certain times where you say, listen, this needs to get done over the weekend. I'm sorry. We're losing money left, right, and center. It's a hard opinion. You have to come in and get this thing done. It's an extreme example. But what that does, Aisha, is that explains or that clarifies expectations on your team. That a hard opinion might be unfavorable, but people know what is expected out of them. So things become a little bit less challenging.
I am glad you share that, because it very nicely goes into something else that I've been thinking about, which is delivery of
Sure.
information. When a woman says something versus a man, it can be taken differently. So if a woman were to deliver a hard opinion versus a man delivering a hard opinion, what do we see there? And it's because I recently read an article on Margaret Thatcher, and the various opinions, largely negative, around her stint as prime minister,
right,
in the UK. She was not looked at favorably as a leader. But then you hear a lot of people, feminists saying, well, what if she was a man and she had done what she had done? Would people have attacked her the same way?
Right.
Had it been a man? So that concept of when a woman does it, it is crazy, right? Like, how dare she? She's a bad person. We should never have a woman leader ever again. But if a man were to do it, like, oh, he's the boss. We got to listen to him.
Yeah. So even with, and let me just make this point, because I'm going to be as careful as possible. I've had bosses who were men who would give really rough feedback, and I would say, what an a-hole. Mm-hmm. Right? So men will get that as well. I've had women bosses who've given me really tough feedback, and I would have a different opinion on that. And yes, that opinion would differ if the roles were reversed. So I want to take a step back here and kind of talk about this, because this is extremely important, and it's going to it doesn't just apply to women, but it applies to both genders, because here's something that I encourage new managers to do, women and men, is when you take on a new team, you need to share with them your communication preferences of how you like to send or share your thoughts and how you like to receive your thoughts or your communication, your inbound. Now, managers make a big mistake when they only share about their preferences, but they fail to ask about their team's preferences. So for your audience, if you're willing to do this, please don't do it if you just want to share. You have to do it both ways, but you have to receive it. And the reason why this exercise is so incredibly important is that if you're doing this as a woman, you can be very clear and explain to your team that when it comes to delivering constructive feedback, you can expect me to tell you clearly what is wrong and what is right. And the same thing applies if you're a guy. And you can ask your team, what is your preference? And your team can say, hey, listen, boss, I know you love to give feedback straight on, but I would like for you to, ease me into it. Great, we can do that. It's such a simple, this is so simple. It's just about expectation setting, but the problem is the timing. You got to do it when you first take on your team. Remember, you and I both started to talk about connecting with people. How the heck do you connect with someone if you don't know how they like to receive their communication? You cannot do that.
Right.
And again, I'm beating this drum, questions and listening. That's what I'm doing, right? I'm asking, what is your communication preference? And when you tell me, I'm listening and I'm making notes.
Right.
So I know when it comes time to giving feedback to Aisha, I know Aisha told me that, hey, I want you to tell me straight up. I need you to pull me aside and tell me, hey, Aisha, you're dropping the ball. Great, I can do that. Or when it comes to Jack, Jack wants me to hold back on my feedback and ask him, hey, how do you think you did? Right? These are principles that apply to men and women. Now, here's the thing. Here's the bad news. You can do it and still people are going to react adversely if you're a woman or you're a man. Right?
Right.
That's going to happen. People are always going to color outside the lines. You can't control that. But what you can do is put in these processes. And when we talk about training, we talk about helping people with these types of processes so they have a little bit of courage to have these types of conversations. Listen, Aisha, you know this. I'm keeping it real with you. Will this fix everything? No. No. But will it help? Yeah. It's going to help people come a little closer to each other. And again, going back to our previous challenge about, this manager having a newborn, if she had and again, we're not blaming her for not having a conversation. We're just saying that if the company had a culture that once you have a new manager or a training that we're all going to share about our families.
That's right.
Things would have been a little different, right? So expectation setting in the hiring process, in the onboarding process, is incredibly important. That's why most managers are failing right now, men and women.
And I think you're right. We put all of these measures into place. Things will not fix themselves. Things may not get better. But one thing where I see improvement happening is if we practice being more courageous, if we learn to become more comfortable with discomfort, all of these other things can take place, right? Where these uncomfortable conversations can happen. And it's not just about, gender roles at the work or home or, people of color versus not. There's so many uncomfortable situations that come up in this world. So if we can practice to be a little more brave and a little more comfortable with that discomfort, it could help. I know it's helped me. It's helped me develop so much more as a person at work, as a mother. I'm having this conversation with you, whereas it would have been uncomfortable for me to just hit up someone and say, hey, let's just chat,
Yeah.
It's helped me. And there's still more work for me to do. There's still a lot more things that I am very uncomfortable with that I need to be courageous about, but I'm practicing. And it's getting important. Someone to that. Right.
Yeah. And you can grow. I hate being such a cliche about this, but it's so hard to grow if you don't feel discomfort, right? Just like you, going through in my own personal life, going through challenges, those have been a blessing when I look back. Now, if you asked me while I was going through them, I'd be like, oh my God, I hate this, right? It's always fun looking back. It's never fun when you're going through it. But the beauty of that is if you're lucky enough to look back, again, I speak from personal experience, you come out stronger, right? If you have that support system. And that's what a team is. That's what leadership is, to cultivate support around you. And again, when you share, and I hate being a nerd about this because I use the word data all the time, but when you share with your team, that's the best way of getting their trust, because they see you as a human being And then they trust you back by sharing their situations. I'll give you another example. When I got diagnosed with my health problems, when I shared that with my team, I honestly feel we got closer because they shared some of the challenges that they were going through.
Right.
Right. And we became we were always a team, but I felt that sometimes we were a group that was working together versus a team that said we're rowing in the same direction. We got your back. Right.
Right.
And that's true leadership. And it's not just me, it's my team. My team helps me become a better leader. And God knows I make all sorts of mistakes on a daily basis. Absolutely. Because I'm a work in progress. Just like you are, just like all of us. I think we have to your point, embrace that work in progress mentality, that we're never done. We're just chipping away the dirt to kind of craft ourselves into something richer, something better. And for your audience, when I say richer, I don't mean money. That's fine too, but richer in relationships, richer in time, richer in health. Because when you start to lose that, then you realize what your real priority is. It's money. When you go through a lot of crappy time in life, money actually sometimes is like, oh man, it's good to have. It's important. But man, there are other things which are equally, if not more important, right? So yeah, I think I was making some notes while you were talking about practicing courage, embracing the discomfort. Those are very important. And my last point here is, if you read about great leaders, not good or average, but great leaders, most of them, if not all of them, have gone through incredible amounts of adversity, because adversity is life's greatest teacher. You got to go, it's a rite of passage.
I mean, that's still something I debate, like, why can't we just learn good things from happiness? But yeah, we just don't. I don't think we're wired that way.
So, I don't know why we're not.
I don't know either.
I wish we were, because God knows, why go through so much drudgery to learn a lesson? But those lessons tend to stick better.
Because you're like, oh, we don't want to feel that way again. So
yeah, it's those are tough. But you got to look back, and like I said, if you're fortunate enough to look back, and if you are fortunate enough to have the time to reflect, because not everyone has the time to reflect. I get this. Some people aren't self-reflective. I'm like, dude, you have 4 jobs. You don't have time to be freaking self-reflective. If I asked my mom, she'd be like, self-reflective? What does that even mean, self-reflective? Right? So we're lucky that we're living in a place, even in these crazy uncertain times, that we can still do that, because life has to continue on, and so does leadership.
Ali, we started this conversation with the question, do women suck as leaders? And I'm happy to hear your unequivocal no to that. But it also led to really great conversation around the complexities of leadership in itself and the world around us. But one thing is still very clear, and it's still very simple to me, that it can start with just one person, and the courage that you can bring to live life as yourself and bring that self to everything that you participate in, work, home, play, whatever it is. And I still believe that it can be that one person that can drive humongous change.
Agreed. And with change, just like small things. You don't have to boil the ocean. I think with courage, just one, I know we're going on and on about this, but this is important for your audience. I think, courage doesn't mean, doing something crazy. It just means doing the smallest things. Just like start really, really small. If it's like making a cold call and you're scared to try that. And if you can't do it, just know tomorrow's you get another shot at it, right? No one's going to judge you. You're judging yourself right now. And that's important. But, courage means making small steps. That's the most important thing. I hear a lot of people who are like, overweight. They're like, oh my God, I can't go to the gym. I'm like, don't go to the gym. That's fine. But you can walk at home. right? Do that. That's one. The next day you're going to walk a little bit more. The next day you're going to do some more till you get to a place where you're like, I can go to the gym, right? And this is a simple example here. A lot of people say, oh, if I can't go to the gym, I don't have courage. I'm like, no, that we have this wrong. We made this into a very sexy thing. No, just do the work. It's the small stuff that you do on a daily basis. Practice is boring. That is why it's so hard, right? You got to just do the small shit, excuse my French, every single day to get better at life and in leadership. That's what we're after here.
No one thinks it's that simple. But again, I keep going back to simplicity because it is. You just identify what that one small step is. Like I know of it. One example for me was what was a goal for me this year? I want to be healthier. Oh my God, that sounds humongous. What does that mean? Do I work out more? Do I eat more? Eat less? Things like that. So the one small step that I took was I signed up for a race at the end of the year. I don't know if we'll be able to do it because of Corona, but I signed up for it. That was one small step for me. I just had to go online, find a race, and just sign up for it. Now, the plan is to then train myself between now and then, which will then mean I'm eating healthier, I'm working out, thinking. So I made myself sign up for something, then I would create a training schedule from, right, where I will take intermittent steps. Or I can just show up on that day to that race and just do it. And then I might even surprise myself by completing the race and saying, you're not in that bad of a shape that you thought you were. Both things to me are great results. Or I could hurt myself in the race, right? And be like, okay, no, I really need to take care of myself. Either way, I'm learning something. I'm collecting data. I'm using your term. I'm collecting data.
Yeah. Yeah. And you signed up. You should, and listen, you signed up. That's the first step. You show up if things get better, and I know it's not supposed to be simple.
Right.
Because if it were simple, we'd all be doing it. Nothing worthwhile in life is simple, nor should it be simple. There's a reason for it, right? You have to become uncomfortable to grow. We spoke about that.
Yeah.
That's just, there's a saying that says pain is necessary, but suffering is optional. Right? So, when you make a mistake, that's pain, but when you start to berate yourself, that's suffering.
Right? It's what the additional stuff that we layer onto that, our own voice and what we say about it.
Right, our own imposter. And listen, it's going to be there. It can guide you as well. I think it's good that we have it because it's a gatekeeper. It protects us from weird things in life. But if it's a little too loud, then we're going to struggle. Okay, you have to cut me off because we'll keep talking. So.
I know. This was really good. That's what I meant by maybe we need a follow-up conversation. But thank you. Your viewpoint is exactly what I needed for this conversation.
Sure.
Because you being a man, right, but also a man of color, but in your position, it's you have a great view into both sides of what a leader needs to be, should be, and then the different challenges that can come into that because of just the diverse workforce that we have.
Sure. I'm happy. Thank you for the high praise. I don't deserve it. What I'll do though is when for your audience, I'll share a link to you for the landmark study that I just quoted, the 5-year study. It's amazing. Men, women, whomever, everyone should take a couple minutes to go through that. And this was a great conversation. I had a lot of fun. Hey, listen, I got to ramble today, so I'm happy.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, let's do this again.
Okay, I'll reach out again.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.